think this is the first joint JIDS WORDE event, although JIDS has been in this space a few times. So this is very exciting. We are very lucky to be associated with WORDE. And I hope you all, if you're not on the email lists, can sign up so that you can get WORDE emails and JIDS emails. And there are more chairs over here if we need them. So I'm going to start. We have a wonderful panel today. Very honored to be part of this. And our topic could not be more timely. I don't know about you guys, but if you're involved in interfaith like I am, you sometimes get tired of seeing the same beautiful faces. You love the faces you see, but why am I only seeing the same faces? Why can't we broaden the tent without losing our soul? There you go. What can we do to expand into the mainstream of the Jewish community, of the Muslim community, the Christian community, other religious communities, without losing our soul? I have to add that. So, I would like to start, just take a couple of minutes of your time to introduce the poison. And then we have some folks here who know a whole lot about the antidotes. And I will introduce them and then they'll just talk. After that, we're going to have a brief Q&A so that you can ask them questions in this large group. And then we'll break out into small groups because JIDS is the Jewish-Islamic Dialogue Society, not a speakers bureau. So I want to start with something I wrote and something I received. So I have to own what I'm about to tell you because I wrote it in my last book. I'm sorry, my name is Dan Spiro. I should introduce myself. I don't matter though, they do. The interfaith movement is but a fledgling entity, a small tributary off the river of same-faith activity. Clergy love to profess their support for the movement, but when push comes to shove, their interfaith activities tend to be modest compared to the energy that they devote to their own kind. When you think about it, that only makes sense. Clergy can expect considerable deference within their own community due to superior knowledge and training. By contrast, when they enter the interfaith arena, they start herding cats. They lose control over the situation and become just like anyone else, crossing their fingers and hoping for the best. Plus, there's not a huge groundswell of support for interfaith work among the faithful. That's because for most congregants, religious activities are like comfort food. And whatever it is you can say about interfaith work, call it rewarding, inspiring, challenging, comfort food it's not. Interfaith dialogue can be frustrating for all concerned. It often takes place on the pablum level, where profound differences are whitewashed and ideas that are presented are worthy of children. Alternatively, the presenters can keep it real, in which case they risk creating widespread animosity. Given the choice, I personally might actually prefer the combat to the kumbaya. But you can see why many would opt for what's behind door number 3. So that's one of the headwinds we face. People who attend congregations and just would rather be with their own kind. And I'm going to now share with you something that I received that tells you just how sick this phenomenon can get. I got this cartoon, I won't show it to you, but I will tell you about it, on Friday at my Department of Justice email. I literally could have been fired if I forwarded it. I view it as pornography. And it was sent by someone that I went to Stanford and Harvard Law School with. It's a man and a woman. The woman is wearing an Obama t-shirt, and they're both young. The man says, "I don't believe that women have any rights, and I think gays should be hanged." The woman says, "Wow, what a complete primitive A blank you are. You must be a Republican." The man says, "No, actually, I'm a Muslim, and those are my religious beliefs." And the woman responds, "Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize. I hope you don't think I'm Islamophobic." Now, to me, that's just a microcosm of the problem. That Islamophobia on the left, or I should say on the right, or anti-Zionism on the left, is now such dogma that people are finding clever ways of destroying people who fall into one camp or another. And if you don't agree with them, it must be because you're politically correct. And this is just a way to keep a dialogue out of our lives. Because why would you dialogue with a Muslim? Why would you dialogue with a Zionist? Right? I didn't say a Jew, because it manifests itself in different ways in our society. But we stand for dialogue in this group, in the WORDE. We stand for dialogue. We think we need interfaith dialogue in order to survive as a society. And we're battling people like this, religious people who would send this around, and people who are apathetic, who don't want to hear about any of this, who would rather be playing golf today or watching the Players' Championship. So we have serious headwinds that we face as an interfaith community, and I want to introduce you to some folks who can help us deal with it. I think we're going to start with Mehreen. Mehreen Farooq is one of our hosts, a senior fellow at WORDE, whose expertise includes countering violent extremism, very topical. Also Muslim community engagement and grassroots community development. She has led field work across 80 cities and villages in Afghanistan and Pakistan, and is now researching the ability of religious actors in Egypt to counter extremist narratives in that country and abroad. Mehreen regularly advises government officials on engaging Muslim communities throughout the world, and is working on developing a manual for U.S. policymakers to engage communities in preventing violent extremism. Speak from there or here is
Thank you so much, Dan, for that overly kind introduction. Can everybody hear me? Is this loud enough?
Talk closer.
A little bit. Is this better? I'm going to practice my karaoke skills. So I wanted to thank you, first of all, Dan, for arranging today's event. I wanted to thank you all for coming here today for this really timely topic. I wanted to kind of introduce a little bit about the work that WORDE does. Many of you, I believe, have already participated in some way, shape, or form in one of our programs. But I kind of wanted to take a step back and explain sort of the methodology behind some of our programming. And I think that might kind of help address some of the questions that we have in our minds today. So for those of you who may be unfamiliar with our work, WORDE uses a research-informed foundation for promoting understanding between communities to mitigate conflict. In 2011, we established the International Cultural Center, it's where we are today, to engage Montgomery County residents in a wide variety of initiatives that promote pluralism and social cohesion based on mutual respect and harmonious coexistence. So our specialists have done community building work in many countries around the world, including Pakistan, Egypt, the UK. So people often kind of wonder, well, why Montgomery County? So as many of us know, this county is home to a number of diverse ethnic and religious groups. You can just take a look around the room and you can see some of that in action. Between 2000 and 2010, the county's racial minority population rose by 40%. And according to the last census, minorities now constitute a majority of the population. So as a result, a larger portion of the population is actually foreign-born. So I wanted to highlight this because those are some pretty significant demographic shifts that have occurred in this county. So we recognized that there was a need to promote tolerance and to reduce any potential ethnic, religious, or racial divisions in our society. So essentially, Montgomery County became this ideal place where we could test out some of those best practices that we had found in community building from abroad. And we kind of wanted to use this as a testing lab to see what we could advocate other communities to do the same. What we knew was that community building wasn't easy, as we all know. And it doesn't mean just bringing diverse people together in a room. So you can't just kind of stick everyone in a room together and hope that they all get along. Social science research suggests that if you're not careful, if you bring together disparate communities, it can actually reinforce the differences amongst those groups, which can further fuel misconceptions of the other and actually increase intergroup tensions. It can backfire if you don't do it properly. So to bridge that intergroup divide successfully, in ways that tend to create lasting change, we looked into decades of research in social integration theory. So I don't want to get academic on you all, but there is also a handout in the back, so if you didn't get a chance to grab that, please feel free to. But what we found in this body of research is that there are several conditions that really need to be observed in order to have a successful engagement. So first, the groups must work towards a common goal. That seems simple. Second, group members must be made to depend on each other to achieve that common goal and brought together in an environment where collaboration is sanctioned as the norm. So in other words, the point is not really a check-the-box exercise. You know, let's have an interfaith event, we'll bring one religious group, we'll have another, and for good measure, we'll throw in 15 other groups. So the point is really to bring together different audiences for a specific purpose that requires partnership and collaboration. In other words, it needs to be for a purpose that no one single entity can do on its own. Third, the groups must work in an environment where there are equal status. No group should be seen as the boss, nobody should necessarily be seen as leading or dominating over the other groups. It really has to be an equal partnership. And this is really important because, interestingly enough, if one group tends to, constantly be in the lead, it can actually reinforce negative stereotypes. So we've all been there. We've always said like, oh, that group, they always speak like this because that's just the way they are. They always do things this way because that's in their culture, right? So if you have that even playing field, then you have less chances of having those misconceptions. Fourth, it's important that the groups should be brought together in a friendly and formal setting where they interact with members of the other group in a one-on-one context sort of way. So we have participants in focus group discussions as part of an evaluation, which I will discuss in just a moment, who said that when they came to ICC events, some of the main factors of success that kind of brought them here time and time again, and I don't mean this as a shameless plug, we're just sharing good practices here, was that they liked being in a friendly environment. They liked the food. They like to break bread together. And actually, the food element, which we all just thought that secretly we're all foodies, but it really provided people an opportunity to get to know one another. So that was really key. Fifth, it was important for group members to have contact with multiple members of the other group, so that they can recognize that positive interaction with, let's say, one person of that group is not just a fluke. It's not an anomaly. So, encouraging folks to get to know multiple members of the other was important. So to apply this theory, one of the cornerstones of the ICC's initial work was interfaith social action. So this is kind of described by our president, Dr. Mohamed, as Interfaith 2.0. It's where our programs are designed to go beyond engaging just the faith leaders in theological discussions to involving communities in hands-on projects to experience shared values. So I think this is really important. I'm actually going to repeat it. So it's when programs are designed beyond just going beyond the pulpit. You're going beyond just the leadership to actually engaging the laymen, the communities, in something that matters to everyone. And this, I really truly believe, is the key to getting the interfaith message out to a wider audience. So our signature Interfaith Social Action Program, Youth Against Hunger, which again I think some of you have participated in over the years, was originally created as a response to the State Department's 2011 Hours Against Hate. So this was an initiative where they try to get different folks to pledge to commit at least an hour a week or something to deconstruct intolerance and to promote social cohesion. So what kind of started off as this one-off event became this monthly event that grew over the next 2 years and really brought together diverse youths and families to produce food for over 800 families and individuals in local homeless shelters in the area. So our objective was to foster a sense of social responsibility. It was to foster tolerance, mutual respect, all while, collaborating towards this issue of mutual concern, poverty and food insecurity issues. We also developed programs like Just Arts. So this was an initiative where youth from different ethnic and religious backgrounds used photography, videography, podcasts even, blogging, to articulate concerns about issues like social alienation, cyberbullying, things that are affecting teens today. Then from 2014 to 2015, our multicultural programs were under evaluation by a National Institute of Justice funded study. So it's an independent study conducted by premier academics in the field. And that they found that our approach of being inclusive of diverse faith traditions has actually had a positive impact in our county. Specifically, our programs were effective in 5 things. So they made people feel welcome, that they were part of something bigger than themselves. It made people feel useful and helped them cultivate a sense of purpose in their lives. It provided participants with a safe space where they felt accepted, free of peer pressure. And it provided a place where participants could learn about other cultures than their own and make friendships that were actually active beyond the event. And then last, it made people feel that they were not lonely or afraid to talk to others. So you'll notice there's a lot of similarities between those conditions of success for social integration theory and then the outcomes of the evaluation. So we've built on these principles for our other programming as well. About 3 years ago, in fact almost to this day, we developed a community-led model for the prevention and intervention of violent extremism. So I always joke with everybody that, when it comes to dinner table conversations, I write, the 2 core rules, like don't talk about religion and politics, but I do both. But, I think the reason why we were able to do that was because, we had a very inclusive approach. So what has been informally known as the Montgomery County model is actually currently in the process of being rebranded to the BRAVE model, which stands for Building Resilience Against Violent Extremism. And this model is essentially a public awareness and empowerment initiative to build social cohesion, to foster that resilience while intervening in the lives of vulnerable individuals before they may engage in violence. So the model, again, is holistic in that it involves multiple faith communities, multiple ethnic communities. And we did this specifically so that we would reduce any potential stigmatization of any one particular faith community. This programming has also been evaluated by another grant that was funded by the Department of Justice, carried out by the Police Executive Research Forum. And they found that participants appreciated the religious and cultural diversity in working together towards issues of public safety. So just to recap here, in the process of collaborating together, on everything from providing food for the homeless to making public service announcements about cyberbullying or participating even in a town hall event with MCPD police chief, town major, we can deconstruct misperceptions of the other. The realization that someone of a different faith or ethnicity may share the same concerns about public safety can actually help us humanize the other and create incentives for collaboration.
Normally I like to confine my introductions to before the speaker speaks. But I wanted to point out, with respect to that cartoon that I read to you, that this organization and WORDE are Muslim women run. So for those people who think that Muslims don't believe that women have any rights and want to handle any people, there's perceptions and then there's fact. The next speaker is actually one of my benefactors, and I remember talking to my own synagogue about an event that they sponsored here in Washington. I Am Your Protector brought a Holocaust survivor into a masjid, and people were shocked. They didn't think that ever happened. Same kind of thing. People's stereotypes don't fit in with reality. but Dani Laurence is a co-founder of I Am Your Protector, which is an organization devoted to speaking and standing up for the different from one's own. She was born in Switzerland as a political refugee from Hungary. She has lived in the Middle East, Europe, and now the United States. She is also an interfaith activist and, like some of us, has devoted a substantial amount of effort to Jewish-Islamic encounters in particular. And her past work includes organizing an international conference, creating multiple NGOs, and initiating a documentary film for French television.
Thank you. Now I know that Nazli Chaudhry is the director of the DC chapter, and she's the one who brought Johanna Neumann, the Holocaust survivor, to a mosque.
Cannot hear what you're saying.
Yeah,
Oh,
you
sorry.
should-
Oh, yeah.
Can you?
Yeah, I'll leave that
Okay.
here. So I just want to say that Nazli Chaudhry is the director of I'm a Protector in DC, and she's the one who brought Johanna Neumann, you mentioned, who's a Holocaust survivor, who was telling her story in a masjid, and she was telling the story of how she was saved by Muslims during the Holocaust. So I'll share with you.
JIDS drafted her in the first round this year of the interfaith draft. So, claim credit for that.
Thank you so much for having me. So I'll share with you a little bit about I'm Your Protector, which, as you said, is a community of people who speak up and stand up for each other across lines of divide and even conflict. We have an 80% success rate in triggering transformation among people who have hateful views, and our focus is reaching out to the people who are often perceived as being the unreachable, and people who by definition are not the one who usually are going to interfaith or to environment where they can be exposed to other communities they're biased toward. So we have two goals. One is to deconstruct the root cause of hatred, in particular in communities who are hateful and who are not the choir of interfaith. And the other piece is building a large-scale movement of people who will be each other protectors. And in history, there's a large number of examples, and I'll share a few with you, of people who stood up for each other, including in times of genocide, conflict, and war. And so it's an example of what we can do even in times of peace or rising tension. So I'll share a few examples. Albania, for example, during the Second World War, was the only country in Europe that had more Jews after the Holocaust than before, because their moral code called Besa said that you have to protect the stranger as much as your own. And so both the king and the people of Albania hid Jews in their own houses, risking their lives by taking them in, sometimes for a few months, sometimes for a few years. Morocco, where the king, when the Nazis brought a number of yellow stars for the Jewish community of Morocco, he said, add 20, and they asked why, and he said, because me and the royal family will wear it too. And they refused to have the Jews wear the star, and right after, the king invited all the rabbis of all of Morocco to join the palace for the yearly event he has as a gathering, which was a very strong message to the Nazis. And that also gives a message that hatred is only possible when the masses are silent and accepting, and when we refuse, we have the power to stop even people like Hitler. And I'll share more about that a little later. So we looked into what were the root cause of hatred and what was the common denominator across all conflict, wars, and genocide, which obviously have their own specificities politically, socially, economically, and in the time and environment the situation is taking place in. But there's one common denominator of hatred and violence is when masses are led to believe that a group is a monolithic block and that block is a threat to them. So when Hitler got in power, he didn't really have a lot of following until he framed the whole issue by saying Jews, gays, communists, etc. are an existential threat to the Aryan people, and we have to defend and protect. And it was the same in ex-Yugoslavia, where there was a very high level of trust, where people thought of each other as brothers under Tito and during the communist regime. And Milosevic almost overnight succeeded to turn against communities that had high level of trust, knew each other, were neighbors, studied together. There was a high level of intermarriage, and people started shooting at each other across apartments in the same building block. Same in Rwanda, where there were some tension, but overall Hutus and Tutsis used to live together. And after the narrative that depicted the group as a monolithic block and that block being a threat to them, allowed to unleash violence that led to genocide. And this is what we're assisting to in Europe and here and in other places too, where today the narrative towards Muslim is depicting the Muslim community as being a monolithic bloc, and that bloc being a threat, which also allows to put that group in a position of defending and protecting. And we see that also on an individual level. If someone commits a murder, kills someone, he's going to be a murderer, but if he can convince that he was defending and protecting, nothing's going to happen to him. And so that's also what's happening on a mass scale. If a country can depict the situation as being defending and protecting, it allows and legitimates hatred and even violence. So I'll come back to that in a minute. So if we agree that the common denominator of hatred is the idea that we depict a group as a monolithic bloc and that bloc is being a threat to us, it has to be broken down in an emotional way, because hatred is created based on emotions, and facts in themselves are not effective. It has been proven. And so what we've seen is that if we present people that they perceive as being their enemies who are their protectors, so for example exposing Jews and Christians who are fearing Muslims, exposing them to stories of Muslims who are protectors of Jews or Muslims who are protectors of Christians, totally transforms their perception. And that works with any groups. It can be men, women, black, white, Jewish, Muslim, Christian, any categories that is depicted as a monolithic bloc and a threat. So I'll share with you one of the activities we did in Reaching the Unreachable, which is specifically not having events that are interfaith, but going to the communities themselves where people who would not set foot in an interfaith event are reached. So that's one of the things we did. So recently we had actually 2 weeks ago in one of the largest synagogues in New York, we had an exhibition for Yom HaShoah, the Holocaust Day. We had an exhibition of Muslims who risked their lives to save Jews during the Holocaust, and they were Iranians, Turks, Moroccan, Tunisian, Algerian, Pakistanis, Indians, and many more. And we had an Islamic scholar who is from Pakistan, Mehreen Afridi, who's also the head of the Holocaust Center at the Manhattan College, who talked about those stories. And so the crowd there was a crowd that was going to the Holocaust commemoration, not a crowd that was a self-selected group of people who wanted to hear some interfaith conversations. Another thing we did was a large-scale public campaign in New York where we had large invisible screens on which you couldn't see anything unless seen through special glasses which we distributed that plays with the content, see things differently, and how we don't have access to certain information. That's why the screen was blank, but once you discover the stories, it was a lot of stories of protectors across different communities with a focus of Muslim protectors. So I'll see if I can play the video for you. The man you saw with the white hoodie was a Pakistani young man who was by coincidence at the same place where we were with the invisible screens, and he recognized himself by saying, "This is me on the poster, we're the one who are doing a human shield in front of the church in Pakistan." And so we collapsed in tears, got in each other's arm, and now he's the one who's heading the chapter in Pakistan, and I'll tell you a little bit what he's done in Pakistan. So we did the evaluation of that campaign, and the result of it was that 80% of people said it changed positively their perceptions of Muslims. So this is one of the events we had, bringing the president of Albania to one of the largest synagogues in New York for a Shabbat, where there was 800 members of the congregation. So again, not from an interfaith crowd, and people were totally transformed. Several months later, we still had people coming and saying it totally changed their perceptions of Muslims. This is a few examples of Muslims who risked their lives during the Holocaust from Turkey, Algeria, Iran, Albania, India, and all of those stories are on the I'm Your Protector website. We had a public theater performance in Times Square twice with approximately 1,000 people, where we told the stories of protectors, and most of those stories were stories of Muslim protectors. And again, people were blown away, inspired, moved. This is one of our events in Pakistan that was run by Rizwan. And some of the posters were about, one was a Jew who was joining the Pakistani community who was mourning the 140 children that were shot in Pakistan, with a message saying, "Your pain is our pain." And one of the posters was about a Pakistani family who saved a Jewish family during the Holocaust. And when Rizwan started talking about the Holocaust with that group who are all activists in Pakistan, they said, "We don't want to talk about the Holocaust because we think it's a good thing and we support it." By the end of the event, they were so moved that they said, "We want to be involved and change the way we perceive Jews in the Holocaust here." That was with Imam Latif and Rabbi Sarna, who are the Imam and Rabbi of NYU. And for the Holocaust Memorial Day, we had an event in the public area, in the street, so people could join, where we had the exhibition of Muslim protectors during the Holocaust, and the rabbi was telling the story of his wife's family who was saved during the Holocaust in Germany by a Muslim Egyptian doctor who saw that they were risking to be deported and brought them with him. They lived with him for a long time. He made fake paper for them in the mosque, saying that they were their cousins. So that's them. This was the event that Nazli held at the MCC in Washington with Johanna Neumann, the Holocaust survivor, who told her story of how she was saved by Albanian Muslims. This was in Geneva. This was in Albania. The picture of the man on the right is the grandson of King Zog, his Prince Zog, the king who saved all the Jews during the Holocaust. And on the first row, some of the descendants of the Muslim families who saved Jews during the Holocaust. And our latest exhibition in New York that is going to different cities, and the next one is LA, is about refugees, presenting refugees as protectors and deconstructing the idea that refugees are a threat and that we have to close our border. And here is, on the right, Syrian refugees who are helping UK people who were flooded. In the middle, it's a Syrian refugee who jumped in a river to save someone who was drowning. On the left, it's Syrian refugees who, a few weeks after arriving in the US, started giving out food to homeless Americans. And there's many stories. There's a Syrian refugee who started doing by himself a soup kitchen in the streets of Germany to feed the homeless in Germany. There's a Syrian refugee who became with his friends a human shield around a woman when there was the sexual assault in Cologne in Germany on the New Year's Eve. And so that has proven to be very powerful into changing the way people perceive refugees. And our next step is building a toolkit for communities that they can use in different instances to expose their community, and also how we can all be a protector on an individual and collective level, and what can we do when in the subway someone say, for example, "You dirty Arab, go back in your country." And silence is very dangerous for a couple of reasons. One is because often it's as traumatizing or even more traumatizing to see the silence of the crowd than the act of hatred itself, which is an isolated thing. The second very dangerous thing is that it gives the message that it's acceptable and it's doable and open the way for that person to recidivate and to also escalate and go further. And also if we look into history, even Hitler, when he was stopped. And then he continued when the way was open. And we see with the example of Denmark, Morocco, and Albania that he couldn't do anything in those places where they said no. So even to Hitler, there's a way to say no. So obviously in other cases too. And when we stop, when we speak up and stand up, it gives the message to the perpetrator that will make it much harder for him to recidivate or escalate, but it also gives a message to all the bystanders that they can also do something. And studies have shown that even if one person speaks up and stands up, it inspires others to, in another case, do something or to rally and join. So we're designing now a toolbox with very specific, very concrete things that we can do as individuals on the daily basis, and what we can do as communities when a mosque, for example, is under attack or when there's a public hateful message, what can we do? And it's going to be released in a few weeks, a few months. And we have chapters in Pakistan, Albania, Switzerland, soon across Europe, going to the Middle East soon. And chapters are opening in different places in the US. And the goal is to have a large-scale campaign coming up in not too long. And I'll end with one of my favorite quotes of Einstein: "The world will not be destroyed by those who do evil, but by those who watch them without doing anything."
So we've spoken a lot about what divides people, between separating groups between one's own group and the other. And one of the things that we do at JIDS is talk about what divides us, but we also talk about what unifies us. And this is reminding me of one of my favorite sessions in our 7 or 8 years, which was at the Adams Center this year, where we talked about pilgrimages to the Hajj, pilgrimages to Jerusalem, and how similar our pilgrimages are. And it was just a wonderful experience. And reminds me that we have another benefactor here at the table. Imam Magid is the senior imam at the Adams Center, which stands for All Dulles Area Muslim Society. Adams is the largest mosque in the Washington, D.C. area and one of the largest mosques in the nation. And it would probably be this in the Washington area, because of course he's one of the leading imams in the nation. But he was born in the Sudan and came here in 1987 and attained his religious education in various Islamic disciplines as a resident scholar at the Al-Madina Institute. He has served as the president of a small organization you may have heard of, the Islamic Society of North America, and he is a tireless activist when it comes to the interfaith movement, as any of us who are involved in interfaith in this city are aware, any of us is aware. He has co-authored a number of books and has led training workshops for imams and other religious leaders domestically and abroad. And among his numerous honors, he was named the Washingtonian of the Year by Fairfax County in 2009. And this is proof that we allow people to cross the Potomac for JIDS. We are not merely a Montgomery County organization.
I said my speech by sending peace and blessing upon the Prophet Mohamed, peace be upon him, and all the prophets of God. And it gave me a great pleasure to be in this space. The idea was Adams giving a presentation, and I said maybe it would be a kind of honoring to have commitment to come to speak to my community, come to speak to our community, and your invitation. Generous invitation that you asked me several times, and they said, "Tell me which day," and I have to stick to it. Thank you for all the work you do, bringing the Jewish and the Muslim community together. And I would like just, because I gave my sermon on Friday. If you don't realize I'm an imam, I'm not going to give a new sermon. I'm going to be very quiet and try to not have shouting or anything. I would like just to say that for me, the interfaith work begins with there's a verse in the Holy Quran where God Almighty says, all mankind we have created from a male and female and made into nations and tribes, so you might know one another. This word in Arabic called ta'aruf, the verb of it, it indicates it is two-way street. In engaging, you get to know one another in both ways. And for me, this ta'aruf cannot be just what's your name, the way you work. It's more than that. You get to know the person, really the core belief, what makes them worry, their fear, their hope. And when we get to know that, then we'll be able to relate to people. And we need to get to know a person who we don't know. And that's why when we talk only to people that they come to interfaith events, we are not talking to people who are not in the room. And therefore you have to make an extra effort to reach out to someone who's not at the table. And I would like just to give you some of my experience in that. I was in Nepal with a group of evangelical Christians and Pakistani Christians and Pakistani Muslim scholars. And evangelical Christian came to support the effort of the Pakistani scholars, Muslims and Christians, who were getting together to make a commitment to protect one another. And as I was walking one day out of one of the hill of Nepal, was a friend of mine, Bob Roberts. I looked at him and said, Bob, you're an evangelical Christian worried about the Christians in Pakistan. He said, yes. He said, do you know that we, at the Adams Center, we had fundraising and we raised $50,000 to rebuild 2 churches in Pakistan? I said, I didn't know that. He said, but let me ask you a question though. What are you doing with Muslims in America? You are the group that attacked the Muslims the most in the United States. Your camp. I was very frank with him. And we built a trust, I can talk to him like that. He said, my brother, what do you like me to do? I said, when you come back to the United States, I would like you and I to gather 15 imams and 15 pastors that have not talked to each other in one place and have them to talk to each other. He took me and my offer, and the offer I gave him, and when he came back, we gathered 15 imams, 15 pastors in Texas. All the states, we chose Texas. Because we know that Montgomery County is a great county. Already great work been done. Therefore, we took them to Texas, and of course, the evangelical Christians have more money than Muslims. Therefore, they hosted us at a big mansion. And we said, listen, we're not going to talk about anything except we're going to do horseback riding, fishing, running, and some shooting, but the imam cannot be in the picture. Therefore, I asked them no camera when the imam tried to shoot. All the while, American Christian who's one black pastor, they can be in the picture and no problem. Therefore, we had that time, and it was, to my surprise, pleasant surprise. The pastor said, you know, we really were sorry. I want to apologize to all of you that some of us, we will not have sat at the table with the Muslim, period. Forget to be an imam. And we decided to make a commitment to protect religious freedom in the United States. Well, I went to National Prayer Breakfast and met with the core of them, and we made a commitment to gather together at National Cathedral and to sign a pledge to protect religious freedom in the United States. As you know, some of you have been in that event, and we signed that with the great group of shoulder to shoulder. Shoulder to shoulder, Catherine was great help. We gathered those people, and now is a pledge being signed across the United States. And we decided to do 5 major cities. We did one in Washington, D.C., and actually the one in metropolitan area in Maryland, in one of the big evangelical church here in Maryland. And then there's one done 4 weeks ago in Phoenix, and he'll be going to 5 major cities. Bob Roberts been attacked himself. If you can see his name, they call him Muslim Brotherhood, all kind of things, because he's doing this kind of work. But he is turning the trends. Bob Roberts. He is the considered like a mentor to many pastors around the United States. And the outcome of this is that when the armed group come and surrounded the mosque in Arizona, one of the pastors who attended our meeting in Texas, he called Bob Roberts and says, "What can I do? I made that commitment to the Muslim imams that I will never go back to where I used to be." He said to him, "Take your congregation and go surround the mosque and talk to those people and protect the mosque." He's talking about protection. And that was the moment of really transformation for both communities. I will say this because I do believe that the conversation of interfaith dialogue has to move from interfaith dialogue to the interfaith benefits. And listen to me. People have to know there's a benefit of the dialogue. It's not just a dialogue. And I like to go with the theme of protection. If they know that their rights to be who they are being protected, and the fear of Muslim taking over, and the fear of losing, what you have been taken care of, then we can go to the next step, which is let us work together fighting diseases, having a free clinic, soup kitchens, do work together that the society benefits from, because religion itself will be under attack. If people see religious people fighting each other, you will see a movement, anti-religious and the religion movement in the United States, as I've seen it in some places. People say Islam is the fastest growing religion in America. It's not true. I'm sorry to say that. The fastest growing belief in America being an atheist. People living in religion, period. The fast growing, yes. People are really tired of religion because they see all kinds of things happening. Therefore, it is all of us together, we need to present a faith that inviting people into. Now, one of the issues that I have seen also is it difficult to bring people who will not come to a place they consider not comfortable. Does anyone have a pen and a paper here? You have a pen and paper? Only for those people who have pen and paper. I have a pen and paper. I just want to do 2 people to do exercise. Only for the audience. Somebody have give anyone a pen and a paper. A paper. Okay.
Well, we have our phone.
Okay. Okay. Now, I know you're going to do a workshop or group, but this is the sign your name. Sign your name. Just sign your name. Okay. Did you sign your name? Taking too long. Write the check. Sign your name. Okay? It could be like, not all of you have to do this. Sign your name. Those who have signed their name, change hand. No, change hand. Like you take the pen in the other hand. Use the other hand. Sign your name. Sign your name. That's the other hand. Because this genius man here have the title of his local man, I'm going with his thing. Okay, did you sign your name? Yeah. Which one is your signature? Which one?
Your right hand. Your dominant hand.
Both of them are signature. But which one you will recognize to be the first one? Let me tell you something. That interfaith that we do all the time with the same group is the first signature. The interfaith we do with people that we don't know and they don't like us, the second signature. If you do it many times, then you'll be able to sign with both at the same time. Same thing. The discomfort, getting out of the comfort zone. I brought a Jewish Israeli settler to Adam Center with the Palestinian activist, peace activist, by, maybe you know him, the Ayad. They come to Adam Center and people are like, you begin to settler to the mosque, you know. But they need to hear the story, no matter what it is. They need to hear both the stories of people. And when you get people in this comfort zone, that way really the real dialogue and genuine dialogue takes place. You can challenge someone's narrative, but let him tell you his narrative. Final things I would like to say so that it doesn't be like another Friday sermon. It is based on a verse from Rumi poetry. Rumi said, which is one of my favorite verse. Beyond right and wrong, there's a field with me there. You have to look for the field and you have to invite the person to the field. I think Rumi was talking about freedom of religion. Because one of the most important things in this work, if you are inclusive, you have to accept people who are exclusive. Otherwise, you're not inclusive. Did you get what I said? What did I say? In order to be inclusive, you have to accept exclusives into the public square. And if you want to say you are the same, Muslims and Jews and the Christians, they believe in the same thing, we don't believe in the same thing. The Jews sitting in this room, they don't believe the Prophet Muhammad is a prophet of God. They don't believe in the Quran to be sacred as they believe in the Torah. The Christians, they don't believe that Jesus is only a prophet. That is a fact. But how can we accept that? And we say, I'm going to protect your rights to be who you are. I'm going to accept who you are. And we're going to protect the public square. And to make sure that no one will violate your rights. And people said to me, tolerance is not a good word. I know. Tolerance is a minimum. But trust me, the Jews that I took Imams, by the way, to Auschwitz twice, I'm taking them on July 3rd time. We're going to the Bosnia, we're going to Syrian refugee camps, we're going to go to Bosnia, we're going to go to Auschwitz. And I can tell you, those Imams from around the world and the Imam from America also were in tears when we saw the shoes of those children and the clothes of the children in Auschwitz. When we saw where the people were burned alive. It gave me goosebumps, now I'm talking to you. That is, if those people at the time would only tolerate it, they would have been alive, and maybe some of them have children and grandchildren. Those children who are stripped from their clothes and burned alive, if just Hitler tolerated them, they would have asked only for tolerance at the time. There's a fear that if people don't tolerate in the United States, mosques can be burned, Muslim kids will be bullied in school, they're being bullied now. Therefore, tolerance sometimes is what we're asking for. But of course, it's not what we would like to stop. But we would like to have people to have better understanding and to engage with the larger community and so forth, and to create that acceptance. I was very moved when I was told about the work of the youth here, and very telling. If you read here and read there, what the children have done, talking about themselves. That's what we would like to feel. Okay, let's say that Imam stop talking. You want the children. I pointed this work because We want children to be able to express themselves. We want a person to be able to confront their fear. You know, some children are not confronting their fear. I asked at Adam Center to the group of youth, I said, how many of you been bullied? To my shock and surprise, 90% of them raised their hand. I asked them, how many of you have reported? Only 2 people reported. Reported. They have reported to somebody. Only two kids did that. I asked the majority, why didn't you say anything to anyone? They said, we wanted to be bullied more, and we worried that somebody was going to hate us more, and we wanted being hated, therefore we kept quiet about it. Those are the children go to depression. A child might think about taking their life. I counseled a young man in one of the high schools who took his father painkillers and wanted to kill himself. And the father has no clue his son was going through this. For us is to talk about interfaith work, is to tell that we're talking about saving people's life. This is not just holding our hands and we are the world. We have, well, you know, respecting the song, but we have to really do the work and to make sure that everyone's rights be protected. I'd like to conclude by saying, a few years ago, the king of Jordan asked me, what can we do for you here? And I asked him, His Majesty Abdullah, I said, we need to hold a conference in the Muslim world to protect religious minorities. And that conversation led to another conversation with Sheikh Abdullah Mabaya, my sheikh, my teacher. And we gathered people in Georgetown University, in Mauritania, in Tunisia, and ended in Marrakesh just a few months ago. And that declaration of Marrakesh Declaration, based on the chapter or charter of Medina, city of the Prophet, peace be upon him, where he laid down the foundation of pluralistic society, where the Jews and others can live in harmony and they have a full citizenship. That's what we're asking today. We ask everybody to be treated as full citizens. We ask government and people of faith and NGOs to work together to protect religious freedom. For every person, no matter how much you disagree with them, they have the chance to be who they are. Thank you so much.
Can somebody work the mic?
We'd like to take a few questions. I'm sure of that, because we want to have small group discussions. But we do want to take a few questions for the panel.
Thank you so much to all the presenters for these excellent talks, and most importantly, they're not just talks. What we really heard and saw is concrete examples of what can and should be done. I don't know about you, but in my late 40s, let's put it this way, I'm becoming a little bit tired of just talking. Talk is good, but talk is cheap. And it's when you really take this talk and turn it into positive, constructive action on the ground is when you see a positive change really happening, which is really the most commendable thing in all the examples we saw from all the speakers today. So thank you so much again for that. I think that what needs and should be done is eradicating ignorance, because ignorance is really the key and main enemy. I was giving a talk yesterday about facts and falsehoods about Islam and Muslims to a group of women who are American university graduates. They're called the AAUW, which is the American Association of University Women. And I was surprised at some of the questions I was asked. The questions were about Sharia law, the concept of jihad. And one woman said, why are you wearing this scarf, this hijab? Isn't this a symbol that you're associating yourself with the powers of evil in this world? I mean, I said, can you say that again, ma'am? I could not register right away. My mind cannot register the question. She said, yeah, when I see you wearing this hijab on your head, what I think of automatically is that you are associating yourself with the powers of evil in this world. I said, oh, she made herself now very clear. So I told her, well, I left my country, Egypt, and I came here to America because we are looking for freedom in America. We are looking for inclusion, we are looking for diversity, we are looking for acceptance. And for me, my veil is nothing more than a religious, identity. It's a religious identity, and it's just like praying and fasting and pilgrimage and any other form of religious, commitment. The only difference is it's visible. You can just see it. That's all. Nothing more than that. The fact that some people out there in the world might associate it with, quote unquote, the evil powers, that does not mean that I should change the way I dress or the way other Muslim women dress. Because if that happens and we are so intimidated and fearful to declare who we are and to declare our identity and to stick to our own values and beliefs and declare them publicly, then this is not the America I want to live in. This is not what America is all about, right? So at the end of the lecture, she came and we shook hands and she said thank you, and that was a useful moment. But that we're talking about here, please, we're talking about university graduates. I was not talking to a group of people who never went to school. Please be careful here. It's a very, very, for me, that was a remarkable experience. You're talking about university graduates, and here you are hearing these kinds of questions and issues about Sharia law and jihad and the veil being a symbol of the powers of evil in the world. So we have a lot of work to be done collectively, not just as Muslims, as Jews, as Christians, as Buddhists, as Hindus, as people of no faith, as members of this human family. What can and should be done to eradicate ignorance, which is our greatest, number one main enemy? And education does not just happen in schools, does not just happen in colleges. It happens in mosques, churches, synagogues, community centers, events like this. So we need to see more of that and to put this into action. And point number 2 is youth engagement. And I think ICC and WORDE has been doing a great job in terms of youth engagement, getting young people on board. Yes, we are helping and we're trying to do our best, but let's face it, we are all sandwiched between gazillions of responsibilities. And as we get older, it gets worse. It does not get any better. So younger people, while they're still having all of this energy and time and they want to change the world, let them change the world in the most constructive and positive way. And instead of being co-opted, God forbid, by some of the powers of evil in the world, right? The real powers of evil in the world, right? That could really be problematic. How can we build on youth energy and engagement and get them involved and get them on board and have them be involved in programs and events like this and other activities, and let them tell us what should and could be done. We can learn a lot from our young people. My son Mustafa, my older son, whenever I tell him about JIDS, he says, that's good, but it's not good enough. I said, what do you mean? He said, don't you see the very same people in every single meeting? I said, pretty much. Well, that means you're just talking to yourselves. That's what he says, right? So he's now in Egypt, but when he comes back, I want to get him on board, right? So, I mean, seriously, you're talking to yourselves, the same people every time. What about those who don't believe in dialogue? The Muslims who would never talk to a Jew, the Jew who would never talk to a Muslim. These are the people you want to reach. So let's really work harder, I think, to put all of that into effect in practical steps. Thank you again. Thank you so much.
Should I take off this symbol of evil, by the way?
First of all, I want to thank the panelists. I think it was really very moving. All the three presentations were very moving and wonderful. I think that 2 points that together make something very, very important is the fact that that maybe one of the things that limits some of our conversations is the fact that we call ourselves interfaith. And we ignore the fact, as the Imam mentioned, that the majority of the people and the number that is growing more than anything else is secularism. And once you say we are an interfaith group, you are basically rejecting 80% of the people because, this is religious stuff, I'm not interested. Maybe we should call ourselves in a different way, and therefore we can attract more people who are belonging to our cultures, but maybe not to our religious faith.
If one of you wants to respond to a statement, you should. So we can take more questions, or one of you can respond at any time.
I have a bad memory, so I don't want to lose my thought. I'll just jump in. I actually wanted to respond to some of the things that Seher had brought up, which I think are really important. One of the initiatives that we had developed here through the ICC is actually an after-school leadership development program called Global Citizens Forum. And so this is something in which we are trying to work with in technical academic terms, it's known as peer gatekeeper training. So it's this belief that peers are most likely to recognize vulnerability amongst their social networks, and that that friends will be more comfortable engaging these peer leaders and soliciting their help if they are in need. So what we wanted to do was to provide some kind of training to encourage students to understand what are the various potential risk factors or indicators of vulnerability, whether it's feeling depression or feeling socially alienated, somebody who might be bullied, discriminated against, and then providing these students with the coping skills. So helping them understand, what do you do when you see somebody who's being bullied? How can you become an upstander? I was mentioning to Imam Magid earlier that one of the events that we had done just a couple of weeks ago was really, really great. I personally found it very empowering. We had brought together some residents from an elderly community who, some of them were 80, 90 years old, and they were sharing their stories about what it was like to flee, Nazi Germany, what it was like to be a Japanese American living in an internment camp. So it's really, I think, powerful for a lot of the students. We had brought together participants of our Global Citizens Forum to meet with these, older citizens to find out, what was it like then to be faced with the discrimination? How did you survive? What were your coping skills? And it was, I think, very important for them to understand that, these are difficult times, but you can succeed, you can overcome them. And, just building on this point of ignorance, it was really powerful. At the end, the students kind of shared one thing that they wanted to commit towards in the future, and some of them said that, we can't necessarily change people's attitudes and beliefs, but at least perhaps what we can do is just, put a smile on our face, engage people who might be scared of us. I saw Hadia in the back, so I was shy to speak in front of her, but one of the things that I've heard her say a number of times is, it's really difficult to hate up close. And so for a lot of the younger generation, it was really powerful to hear them say that, if somebody is looking at me, kind of in a sense of apprehension, maybe the least I could do is smile. And I thought that was really, really powerful. So, encouraging youth, I think, to go beyond their comfort zone and to provide them also with those coping skills is really important.
Is this program ongoing? I just wanted to know if this program is ongoing and could we advertise it?
Yeah,
It is something.
looking at
Yeah, you're going to do the next one, Mama Mona.
I'm going to come out of the closet here. I am a Lutheran pastor. I'm on several email lists for Interfaith Dialogue, and this came up on my email list. I don't live too far from here, and I thought, I'm going to show up. I'm particularly interested in this topic because I've been very involved in interfaith dialogue and issues for 8 or 9 years now, and I've served 3 churches in this area. One was in DC. They were very, very active, very supportive of interfaith dialogue. The other 2 have been suburban churches, and when I try to engage them in excitement, they'll go, yeah, but what about the church budget? Are we going to meet the budget? So trying to engage people in this and the need is something I'm so excited to hear that there are specific techniques, and I hope we all can access those. Also, as the Imam said, we do have differences, and I was so happy to hear you say that. Because we are not served by everybody being homogenous and holding hands and having a kumbaya moment, as you said. We are served by observing the other and saying, wow, that's not me, but what you have is beautiful, and learning from each other. I am a better Christian and talk about we'll all expose our symbols of identity, and as some people would call hatred, there's mine, as well as this collar here. But we are served best by looking at the other and learning. Krister Stendahl called that holy envy, looking at the other and saying, no, I'm not you, and you're not me. And I'm glad of that. I'm glad we are different, because otherwise I couldn't learn from you. So thank you very much. And the relationship building as primary, I think that's where we have to start, with people getting to know each other as people. So, thanks. I'm so glad this came up in my email.
May I say one thing?
Okay, but wait, oh, you wanted?
Yes, I just want to say one thing before. I think one of the issues that we need to think about also, that associating religion with political labels. What do I mean by that? Liberal, conservative. It's very interesting to me. I have seen the most conservative religious group of people, sometimes they want Muslim to be liberal. Because they think, to be honest with you, I've been in those conversations. They are not comfortable with conservative Muslims. Therefore, they will, if Muslims are socially conservative, for them that is not a good thing. Therefore, they will attack Muslims for the same thing they believe in. But the Muslims should not have those, because that means they're devoted to their religion and they're a threat. That discomfort, and by the way, this is across the board. We have Sufi scholars who are socially conservative. If you go to the Pakistan, and Mehreen knows that people might be socially conservative in how they think. But we'll have a group of people who says, we cannot do interfaith with this group because maybe they believe that only a man can lead the prayer. They are not open enough. Okay? One of the things that I would like to address in the interfaith world is that how can you accept a person does not prescribe your interpretation of religion, because sometimes you might have yourself, in Christian and Jewish or a Muslim, might have a particular interpretation of religion that maybe you want to impose on someone else, and that person says, if you're not like this, you're not good enough. It is not my business to impose my theology on somebody else, but it's my business to make sure that my rights being protected and the rights of that person be protected. That's what I really want to see in America, to change that discourse of trying to define who is a good Muslim, a bad Muslim, who is a good Christian, a bad Christian, who is good Jewish, a bad Jewish. Every Jewish and Christians and Muslims and Buddhists and Hindus and so forth have a right to be who they are, no matter what they believe look like. That's one thing. Second issue I'd like to bring is the issue that you brought very eloquently, the issue of the youth. How can we take this dialogue from the adult levels and to really a youth movement? And I think that transformation can happen in the youth levels. I know some of the, establishment in our religion are not open enough sometimes. But if you have the youth maybe they are the one later bring the change, because they are the one who become the member of the board of the organization, they become the leaders of our mosque and the church and synagogue and so forth. What I really, and JIDS, really thank you for bringing this topic and confronting it, that we've been singing the same song for a long time, but we have not been performing for others. Thank you.
I see a lot of hands raised, and as I told you, we could go through this for 100 minutes. But I think what we'd like to do is break right now into small groups, then we will return to the big group. But we're going to lose some folks now, and I wanted to allow that to happen out of courtesy. So I'm figuring we can break up into 6 groups. And I've got some suggested questions for the small group discussions to pass out. Maybe in each group, there's somebody who can serve as a kind of a note taker, and then we can return to the large group for the last few minutes. Maybe take 25 minutes or so for the small groups. So if you don't mind breaking into
how hard it is to get oftentimes the media to cover, and somebody said, I thought it was a very important comment, which was, we should not assume that the media is only going to be, if it bleeds, it leads. There's a good piece of that, and but the media will cover a good human interest story. So somebody mentioned the example a week ago, which I somehow missed that story, of the efforts of religious communities, I guess, in Canada to help Syrian refugees, and what they're doing in very real kind of human terms, not only to give a lot of love and kindness, but also to help them with jobs and training and many other things. So that's a really good example. And I noted that in a couple of weeks we're going to be having, together with Rabbi Jeff Sachs at his synagogue in Virginia, in Northern Virginia, is going to be hosting Syrian refugees as part of the Syrian Welcome Dinner effort. And so it'll be interesting to see if how the coverage works on that one. Number two, should we try to tackle some controversial issue in order to wake people up about the importance of the interfaith movement? There was a lot of feeling in our group, I guess, about the idea of an anti-bullying campaign, that is incredibly important because that brings in many other issues, and it also gets to the youth, being so important. So maybe that is an effort that the groups should engage in. We also talked about various other social service efforts, such as Habitat for Humanity, Feeding the Hungry. I talked about working together against Islamophobia and anti-Semitism. People talked about the wonderful new Sisterhood of Salam Shalom movement and how that's spreading. So, yeah, that there was a lot of feeling that we've got to really come together and get behind causes that are meaningful and help people. And somebody mentioned also, I think, the point that had been made earlier, that we should not necessarily only, tag it as interfaith, but rather that we need to give space to non-religious folks to feel, or people who feel that they're secular, that they should be involved. We didn't get a lot beyond that because we were so into all that. What can the places of worship be doing? Are they doing all that they can to broaden interest in the interfaith movement? Obviously not, and that needs to be worked on. But I think I'll stop there because that's about as far as we got.
Excellent. So group 2 is over there.
Group 2, right? Get number 4.
Who is speaking for this group that was over here?
I am. Yes, I am. I was saying this, so I guess I am.
Hi, I'm Nazli Chowdhury, and I think our group really didn't go by the questions. I just kind of entered into the group while they were deeply within their discussion, and so I'll talk about what they were talking about, the younger generation, reaching out to the younger generation. And it was pointed out that all of us older folks are sitting here talking about how to reach out to the younger generation, and there's no one here to represent them really. So someone suggested we need modes of communication that the young are using to communicate with them. Social media, and Sahar suggested investing in and or creating social media venues that are more amenable to reaching to the younger generation, and more interactive, that they can have a say in creating and also in perpetuating and continuing with that. What else did we say? We also talked about peer training. We talked about the importance of, if we're going to reach out to youth, whether it's within our faith communities or in general, we need to reach out to them and train them so they can lead their own groups. I think that's what we implement, their own groups. And then we also talked about what has worked in other faith communities and within the communities that reaching out to and bringing in communities. And we talked about a project called the Twinning Project. It's through the Foundation for Ethnic Understanding, and they've been doing this for a number of years, mostly in New York. But the twin mosques, and it started in New York, but it's spread all over the United States. The twin mosques and synagogues together, so they can come together. Usually they do one day to do programs together, whether it's social action programs or visit each other's places of worship and do something, but and hoping that they will build a relationship and continue the programs even after the twinning event. We talked about faith in action, doing things that are good for all of the community, but different faiths collaborating and doing the events together, but that benefits everyone, whether you have faith or not faith. So we talked about those as important. I think that was about it. Did I miss anything?
You talked about your experience in New York and how you made the groups in selling.
Oh, okay. So I shared my experience in. We also talked about how the youth are kind of leaving the faith synagogues or mosques and whatnot. We call it the unmosking of youth, because they feel like they're not being represented and they don't have a say in their faith communities, and so they're leaving in droves. And I talked about when I founded a youth group in our mosque was I gathered the youth and I asked them, what would you want and what would you like to do if we formed a youth group in our mosque? Would you come, and what would bring you here? And they shared things with me, and based on that we formed a youth group. But we made it as a faith in action. We didn't sit there and preach them religion. We talked about why it's important to take care of the hungry in our, why it's important to beautify our gardens, and why it's important to know how other people have dealt with hate crimes and whatnot. So we made a trip to the Holocaust Museum, and we planted vegetables and fruits in our own mosque campus, and then donated the food. So we did things like that. We did blood donations, and then it just grew from there. And so getting the youth involved within their faith communities the way they want to be involved, I think is key and really important.
Sure.
Before she entered the group, we were just, at least I expressed the concern that the questions seem premised on a different approach than what we were presented with by the speakers, which is to reach people where they are and bring speakers in to talk about things. And so that was another point that at least I thought was important.
Group over there. Spokesperson for the group that was in that corner. They all left?
Either that or who they work for. Major case of denial.
All right. Okay.
I thought we had another spokesperson, but apparently not. So we were a little bit all over the map, but there were a few themes in our conversation. There was a recognition of the importance of youth engagement and the importance of that target demographic to include young adults, although someone acknowledged that it is oftentimes or can be the older generation that is transmitting the negative messaging to the younger, so these are all target populations. There was a lot of time spent on holding the press accountable, and I think that might be one of the major themes that we talked about, how to do that, how individual houses of worship acting alone don't have a lot of impact, but if in an interfaith environment, if we speak with one voice, perhaps that would be more impactful. There was talk about taking advantage of resources within our own communities. Somebody mentioned having an NPR journalist in their congregation, and I'm sure we all have those types of influential people in our communities who perhaps can be leveraged. Somebody mentioned the great work that is done in the secular world with branding and name recognition, like with the Avon Walk and cancer fundraising initiatives, and how this is very influential and successful. And if there could be an interfaith social action umbrella that is not associated with any particular faith group, but is us, people who care, that could be very impactful, although someone else pointed out that literally takes years and years to get off the ground. Folks, anything else? Help me out. There was some talk about one congregation, one Presbyterian congregations, yes? Episcopalian, sorry, imminent adoption of a Syrian family, Syrian refugee family, and how you can work with other faith communities to support them and to support all of the Syrian refugees who are coming our way.
All right, one final one. The last group, Samir's group.
Shalom. I'm glad I'm the last one because everyone was so good. They covered everything. I don't have to say anything. And also, they took such detailed notes. I didn't take that many notes. The main couple of points that we made, one of them, and I'm going to ask Jim to read his statement in more details, is that the current political campaign is an opportunity for us that interfaith community should hold the political leaders accountable for all the negative things they are saying, and somehow get them to stop saying those things. And the method that we came up with was, and I'm sorry that Magid left, the method was that we need a name recognition imam, like Magid, name recognition pastor, anybody, and I know a priest, Makaric, and a name recognition rabbi to join hands together and write an op-ed that should draw attention of the political leadership. That was the method we came up with. And the recent leaders have to be asked, demanded, they should condemn all these negative things, Islamophobia, anti-Semitism, and everything that's negative. They should openly condemn it. They should be required to do it. How do we do it? We don't know. But they should be required to do that. And it was mentioned that Muslim voices are being voiced, but they are not reaching out because media is not paying attention to them. Dan was held responsible to make sure that Muslim voices are heard. The interfaith community should do something to make sure that Muslim voices that have already been voiced should be promoted, that they're. And then, of course, we all talk about the key is young people, but we don't know how to reach out to them. And we should, one way is to launch programs in high schools and colleges and try to induce them to get more involved. And there is a very strong statement that Jim wrote, and I want him to read it.
Probably most of you have heard about Grover Norquist and his anti-tax pledge that he has hoisted on candidates across the country. And candidates have, with a certain amount of trepidation, signed up on his anti-tax pledge because they fear what the consequences would be of not signing the pledge. Well, there are all sorts of pledges that could be put forward, and national interfaith leaders have a unique credibility and a unique authority when speaking about values. And if national interfaith leaders could put together a pledge document and ask candidates across the country, without regard to party affiliation, ask candidates across the country for congressional office to sign a pledge saying they uphold certain values, including respect for religion, respect